for you guys today. Christian Jacobsen is an ad industry entrepreneur, brand strategist, and one of the co-founders of The Many, formerly known as Mistress, an award-winning integrated agency based in Santa Monica, California. As a classically trained brand strategist who previously held roles at agencies like Ogilvy and Kastner Partners, servicing brands like Red Bull, Jacobsen co-founded the agency in 2010 to pioneer a project-driven, highly adaptable agency model suitable for digital-first media landscapes. Under his leadership, The Many has developed Cannes Lion-winning campaigns for global brands like Mattel, such as the viral record-breaking life-size Hot Wheels stunts at the X Games, Netflix, ESPN, Disney, American Apparel, just to name a few. Christian, thanks for coming on, man. Appreciate you spending some time with us today.
Yes, good morning. Pleasure to be here.
Let's go.
Little anxiety around being live as we were just discussing. Hopefully, I don't use too many filler words and frustrate
people. Don't worry about it. You're gonna kill it. So, well, hey, I know I gave some context there. Kind of post founding The Many, being part of the founding team there. But maybe you can take us back, maybe even a little bit more. So, where'd you grow up? What'd you study? And how'd you get into agency land?
Oh my Lord, we're going way back. I'm an old guy, right? I've been around a long time. I'm an East Coaster. I live in California now. I've always been a surfer. It's probably parents. So I ended up out here. It's, being a surfer on the East Coast, which I was my entire life, is really frustrating because you have to drop everything to follow the weather. But I started my career there. I started in Madison Avenue. I studied on the East Coast. I was a marketing student. And I think, like many people of my age, I stumbled into the business. I went to this school and I studied. I actually majored in, my focus was marketing. I didn't fully understand like what that would mean. And until I started interviewing around. And I tried a couple different things. I started in media and I just realized like, I think I want to be in a more creative environment. I don't know if I'm going to fit in the corporate environment. I'm cut from a different type of cloth. And I read a book called Where the Suckers Moon, which is an old book about Wyden and Kennedy winning the Subaru pitch amongst a bunch of agencies. And I was super inspired by just how like chaotic and interesting all the dynamics were, the development of the campaign. And that kind of propelled me right into the first brand I worked on actually was a Mercedes-Benz. So I went right into a car.
Wow, that's pretty awesome.
And then I've been around long enough that I could actually say when I tell people the story, I've had the privilege of working with many of the people that were in that book over the course of my career. Wow. Whether it was like Lee Garfinkel or different people. I've just been at some of those agencies. So it's been a journey. I've been around for about 30 years now. So I've seen a lot, and I've been a part of New York advertising. Now I've been a part of more West Coast advertising. I remember that transition. And then probably the biggest pivot for me, which I explain to folks all the time, is I did say 10 years on Madison Avenue. So I had like all the traditional training. And then I did a bit of a pivot after that. And I ended up going to a very small agency. But it was international. It was quite interesting. It was the agency that Red Bull was birthed out of. Everything was done quite differently. That changed my entire perspective. And then from there, I ended up with some of my partners creating my own shop, which was called Mistress.
I love it. So we talked about kind of the idea of what Mistress originally, the thesis was that, you were wanting to challenge the traditional AOR relationship, and you can kind of hear it in the title, right? The idea of Mistress is, hey, if you're not getting what you need from your significant other, maybe you can try a rendezvous with Mistress and see if we can bring in some outside thinking and work on a project basis to help you solve a challenge. This is pretty commonplace now, but 10 years ago maybe was more innovative. So be curious, what were you seeing in the market that kind of made you think that you needed to bring a different model to the table?
I appreciate that question. And I would just say it was 16 years ago.
Oh, excuse me. Wow. Yeah. Going back even further, right?
Things were quite different. And it's a cool origin story. So I was at Red Bull's agency, we were doing all sorts of stuff, and it was very non-traditional. And I actually was trained in many ways to kind of think like a client, just the way that we worked. But I realized that so many things were changing. It was I think the acceleration of a lot of the social platforms. This was pre even Insta, when we really got going for me. But I was at that agency. I was watching a media change happening. I was seeing how Red Bull did things quite differently. I was watching I've always been like a technophobe, even though I'm deep into technology now. But I realized that a lot of things were changing and there was an opportunity. And then I also realized that some of the most interesting work was going to some of these like project-based digital agencies at the time. Now, I had grown up in an AOR era. And at that time, you also, as an agency, and it's still hard to do projects. Like so many agencies have failed trying to do projects because it's hard to have that continuity. It's hard to grow your people. So when we founded our company, like being a project agency, at least what we were trying to do from a more of a brand and creative side was kind of stupid. It was like, no, get your AOR clients, build off of that. And then, there were a lot of interactive projects happening, but I thought there was an opportunity, and I was just really creatively driven with my partners at the time. And so we said, let's go just take that contrarian thinking. And this was also at the height of the Great Recession. So I had just modeled out, the U.S. economy over 100 years and said, listen, it drips and it always goes back. Like it's going to come back. Things are going to change. Our industry is like compressed right now. I think it was like by 30%. A lot of agencies were down. It's going to open up. Like, let's be a part of this. So that was kind of a pitch to my partners. Like, I think we're going to bounce back. Media is going to change. There's an opportunity here. And a lot of these large agencies are so focused on what the playbook has been for so long, but we're seeing branded content in YouTube. We're seeing agencies try to make products. All these different innovative opportunities are out there. Why don't we go do that? Let's just go do that. And my two creative partners had come from Mother in Europe, and they had a campaign where people were singing, but they actually turned it into a musical, and people paid money at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival
no way.
to go see a musical. And so we all kind of galvanized around this idea of there are other ways and more innovative ways to do what we're doing. And that was really our concept, why we were called Mistress. You can have your AOR, you can have that multi-year relationship, and they're going to manage all this. But if you want to experiment on the side, if you want to try to reinvigorate your brand by doing something totally different, we're here for you. And so we were, the first into so many things, whether it was making influencer TV spots where we were taking social influencers and putting them on TV, or doing things like that we knew would amplify the work. We were just trying to hack things at all times, or creating stunts or what have you. So what I think was powerful at the time was just Mistress wasn't another agency name. It was a concept. And that's where we've been driving the many to, which I can get to during the rest of this conversation as well. Agencies used to be named maybe after the folks that were there, that the people you really wanted to hire. Or maybe there was a name that represented that special mojo or that like attitude they were bringing. For us, we wanted it to be a little bit more defining as to like what we're going to bring to the marketplace. And it was wild and fun, and we did really, really cool things. But eventually you grow out of that. We started to build in more layers. We wanted more accountability. We wanted to deliver more results. This was at a time also when we founded the business when not everything was so attributable, and so as media changed, we grew and we ended up becoming an integrated agency. And we also needed to do that because we had to give more stability to our staff and growth paths. So it's just a natural process.
I love it. So let's get into it. So at what point in the journey did, I've talked to some of your other founders as well over the years. And, one of the things that I think is really interesting is, you go in with this project-based thesis and it's very successful, and then clients come to you and say they want to hire you as AOR. Or hire you for media, or hire you, for these more full-time traditional models.
Yes.
Was that surprising or awkward for you at all, to where you're going out, you're having success with this new model, and then clients are coming and saying, oh no, yeah, but we kind of need you to, we love your thinking. We'd like you to go back to, some of these more traditional arrangements, if you will. So I'd be curious how did that, go over with the team at first?
We lived conflicted lives. I think this industry always keeps changing, and you have to adapt and you have to evolve. So I can tell you that it was so much fun, and the confidence that you can have just saying, we don't have any desire to be your AOR. At a time when people weren't doing what we were doing, it was just, and listen, there were some other shops, I'm sure, that were doing that, but we were very confidently just positioning ourselves this way. And then we loved that. And as a strategist, I just loved the clarity of that positioning, how it vetted clients, how it was very clear to people when they were going to come in, how we were going to ask them to think about the businesses, where we were going to go. You had to be up for the challenge, is what we used to say, because we're going to pioneer in some space that we don't even know what it's going to look like. And those things that you just mentioned did happen. And one of the elements that we struggled with the most, because we always talked about, like, we're building Voltron or we're building a layer cake. We build, social end. We take one initiative and kind of built it into the agency. And for a number of years, clients wanted us to do media. And out of the group of original founding partners, none of us were experts enough. And none of those media dollars were enough to give us the confidence that we could actually hire the team, or even if we knew who the right people were. So it actually led to a merger in our company, where we brought on, and so we have a partner, Amir Huck, and he had a company called Supermoon. Prior to that, it was Tiny Rebellion. They were much more performance oriented, had strong media capabilities, and so he was an LA agency as well. And we realized we were in the same spaces, but we had never competed, because our lenses were looking at businesses quite differently. But we were both in travel. We were in similar spaces. So we saw a wonderful synergy. And so Amir brought his business in, and then we really leaned into growing our media business, building out the analytics side, really becoming better at performance marketing, which was coming out of our social side. And so that was one of our bigger steps that actually led to a name change, because now we were becoming an integrated full service agency beyond just like the AOR, because we did have some clients that were signing us. But we had, at the time, it was quite interesting and so diversified, because we would just have so many projects. But once you start taking on that accountability and that depth with the client, it's just a very different relationship. And I would just say it's probably stages of maturity of an agency that they all eventually go through. Otherwise, you can stay small. And I think what was a challenge for us too is everybody wants to grow personally. Yeah. And we were doing so much of the work in the early stages, and we wanted to grow into better business people, have a more efficient business, a more effective business, help grow our people. And so that also was a challenge with the project-based business, because when you're constantly grabbing that project, doing that work, and we were trying to grow beyond that, it just forced us into, evolving into a more mature agency. And then that led to our name change along with culture.
So as someone who kind of looks out for the brand of the agency, can you maybe tell us a little bit about the name change? What was the triggers? Was it the merger? Was it, many things? And then I've always loved the name. It's like, I'm a big student of agency names, and it just hits right. Be curious kind of where it came from, if you could tell us a little bit about the origin of the name as well.
Absolutely. It was many things. It was one of those moments of time where clients, culture, and our own growth told us it was time to do it. And we had been discussing it for a couple of years, because we had been growing beyond just the project-based. So our creds started sounding differently, or different, sorry. And so did we do it? We have so much equity. We had won many awards. There was a lot of fame related to the business, but we felt like we were outgrowing the positioning. And Supermoon had come in with Amir, and then culture. And Amir was questioning, well, hang on a second. We're doing different things now. And he was just a fresh, objective perspective for us, which was fantastic. And the amazing thing was Amir came in, and we all sat around the table, and he just slotted right in next to us, and we were a team. But he was asking, some of these questions, and we were saying we're in agreement. So we had been working on it, not that seriously, and then culture had changed, and our name all of a sudden, within say 6 months, started bringing up like distractive conversations in the early stages, just because of where culture was. It was around the Me Too movement. There were so many from our perspective. And this was also me saying, listen, we're the arbiters of culture for our clients. You know, we're always on the pulse of culture. We're supposed to be ahead of everything. And these conversations are kind of distractions. We're meeting some of these clients and we want to get right into the work and they want to talk about the name. So we had an offsite and we just said, we think the world is now telling us that there's a chance for an evolution, and we wanted to retain something, and in the end we retained an M. But actually Scotty Harris, one of the co-founders, we had gone through maybe hundreds of names because what's right for us, you know, what is the right thing? And at the time, because we had an international composition of founders who all had kind of different accents. You know, I was an American, we had a German, we had 2 Australians who come from England, and then we had Amir come in as a Canadian. Our whole office had so many different accents. It was just, you know, quite different because of our composition, even though the founders were all male. And the other thing about our business, if we go back to that origin story of doing those projects that were kind of new, pitch consultants constantly told us that one of the challenges they had about presenting our agency to clients was they couldn't put us in a box. They couldn't be like, these are the brand TV guys, because our work was influencers or stunts or social, or we did do some brand campaigns, or we did a TV show or a couple TV shows or whatever it might be. And so Scott just said, well, I just think our name should be the truth. It's the many, because we have so many accents. We do so many different types of work. We're not limited to any of this. It's human based. And it was interesting because we had already picked another name, which I don't remember at that time. And we didn't really love it, but we're like, okay, that makes strategic sense. And then Scott, just like 2 or 3 meetings later, was like, hey, I just thought of this thing. And he said the name and we all just went, boom, love that.
So cool.
I think the challenge we had was for a number of years, we weren't clear enough on connecting that name to our specialty like we were with Mistress. And that took a little while.
Took some time to ease into the new storytelling.
Correct. And then think about it in advertising has been for more life has been that. So we were trying to help all of our clients, you know, with pandemic and also work on ourselves. It's that cobbler's kids have no shoes kind of scenario. So we didn't have enough time to really work on brand enough, which is what we've been doing the past like 3 years or so, I would say, to really tighten up and get back to, no, it's conceptual, what this name represents. And I too love this name. And I'm very bullish on the name and the brand just because of where we're headed as humanity, as a society, as culture, in a synthetic age. Being called the many, I think is quite powerful.
Yeah, totally. When you have kind of the global stream of consciousness of all, you know, human learning through AI, I think the idea of, you know, many parts or many kind of hive mind thinking, or in a way, or kind of being able to leverage that makes a lot of sense in kind of where we're headed, I think. So, all right, let's talk a little bit about this concept of participatory marketing. You've been a prominent advocate for it. You know, this idea that marketing needs to evolve beyond broadcasting to participation. How would you define participatory marketing? And what's a traditional one-way why is traditional one-way advertising losing its effectiveness?
I have a whole book coming out on this
in
a couple months. Yep. But I'll give you the shorthand on it. And so, yes, it's a term that we've kind of coined, participatory marketing, but it's not new. It represents, and the way that I would just articulate it that we do internally, it's the ability to harness the power of a brand's audience, the community, the consumer base to help it punch above its weight. And we've all been doing this in many different ways for some time. And the media which media and technology have become the same thing. It's been pushing into this space for some time. And younger generations, these are their expectations. And so what I've just been arguing, and I'm not saying this is the only way. I'm just saying this is a way, and this is a way that we are specialists in, but it's not just us. And I'm putting an umbrella over many things that may be in the traditional form of developing work or looking at the business or the tactical extensions of a brand campaign. And I'm actually arguing, no, those are probably the most effective and engaging and award-winning ways to be going to market these days, versus like what we've always done. And the reason why I say this is just because, technology has been moving in this direction. It's really going to accelerate in this direction. Consumer trends and what, they've grown up with multi-way media, and they're growing up with the ability to create. And there's so many powerful stats about younger generations that are, they're looking to co-create, they want to get involved in brands. We've seen it through social, but it goes beyond social. So I'm putting an umbrella over, say, social, stunts, activations, branded content, all the things that bring people in and they do something, whether they're the amplification, whether they're helping solve a problem, whether they're co-creating, whether they're remixing because they want to do that. And why do they want to do that? I've gone into that deeply in my book, which is it's inherent in all of us because we grew up as a tribal society. It's still in our DNA. We were all participants in what we were doing. We were not really born to sit there and just absorb. We're born to participate. It's a sense of agency. And if you think about it, everybody seeks agency, right? You want to control your own decisions. If you even look at the debate that we've had over the past few years of, are we virtual or are we in the office? People are pushing back because they don't want to lose their sense of agency or they want a sense of agency in the conversation. It's inherent in all of us. So why I love the concept of participation and why I think it is the future of my business, and I'll explain that, at least in terms of humanity, it's because it's what we're tuned to do. And now the media has really been enabling it. And the technology is going to really facilitate more of it. And so I see it as, as old as humans, what's been really working and exciting people about the ad business for the last 20 years. And it's only going to accelerate moving forward in the era of AI, where my thesis is that the machines, because they've had all this training, are going to be experts in persuasion. They're going to be you're going to have agent to agent shopping. I just put something out last week where, it's going to be in the trillions in terms of like how much spend is for agent to agent shopping within the next couple by 2030. And it's going to continue to grow. So if I want to have a purple shirt, my agent's probably going to find this, or we all look at how hyper personalized content is becoming, shopping is becoming. So it's going to be seamless. But if you want to have a brand, and this is what I've just been out arguing, if you want to have a brand, that's about an emotional connection. There's something more to it. People actually care about it. And we also know they want to get involved in it. That is where participation comes in. And they'll both live next to one another. I think the push toward automation, the push toward hyper-personalization is going to drive transactions. It's going to drive sales. We're coming out of an epic, that I would say, of performance marketing and media, because there's been so much macroeconomic swirl that clients have primarily wanted safety for the past 4 or 5 years. They don't want to lose their job. They work to work. So we're in a safety epoch, or epoch. I don't know the proper way, but if you look at the way advertising works, but we're going to come out of that because everybody's going to have these automated tools and everything is getting dialed. And then they're going to actually say, who are the humans? How do we prove that humans really care about our brand? And this is where we believe participation fills that void. And it's what we've been doing as a company. Why I also am just a big proponent of it is I come from Red Bull that worked quite differently. If you think about the fact that they do stunts, they do content, but everything was an invitation in. When you think about that brand, the last thing you probably think about are cartoon campaigns, which is brand. You're actually thinking about all the ways that they're connecting with communities, inviting people in. People want to wear their brand, their merchandise. They've been doing this for a really long time. They're kind of the original participatory brand. There are many other brands that are like this. And they almost have this, people always want to be a cult following. Well, you just have to open yourself up and invite people in. My agency, we were doing that in the earliest days. You mentioned in our pre-call, that we were doing stunts or activations or influencer work. So it's just true to us as well. So when I connect our name and harnessing these people and our history of work and where I think the future is going, this is really our conceptual space and our thesis as a marketing and agency brand as we move forward. We do all the traditional work too. We have all the data and analytics and media mix modeling and all the things that everybody needs in this era of knowing that the work is going to work. But I'm living a little bit more in the future and saying, I see where this is headed, and I'm seeing how empowered people are and how efficient this is if you can harness them. And I think this is a massive opportunity for all brands.
I love it. You mentioned this idea that as tribal, human beings, we've always participated. I think the interesting thing about AI is it's unlocking creativity. Like, I think traditionally it was the artist class that was the expression of that participation. It's like we would donate money to artists to have them paint, and create statues. And there was this kind of like donor class or this group of people who couldn't do the art, but they appreciated it, so they would empower the people who could. Now AI is kind of creating this lower barrier to entry with creativity and technology at the same time, where cameras are becoming ubiquitous. But do you think the lower barrier to entry to what would be considered, creative is empowering more consumers to be participatory and do some of the things like you talked about, like with Red Bull, being able to grab a GoPro or a phone and go out and do something that you're passionate about, like surfing, but actually create content that is compelling and interesting and that you could be proud of?
We've been watching this for a while. This is pre-AI. If you think about how many young people right now, the stats like extreme, it's probably in the 90s, want to be some sort of influencer or creator. And so we've been watching this for the past 15 years as power has moved from fewer creative gatekeepers and it's been democratized. And we just think about, everybody's got it right here.
Yeah.
And even part of our conversation is like, what works on the biggest platforms on the planet? It's not like the fanciest, craftiest stuff these days. It's actually things that feel the most human and authentic. I think that these created millions of creative directors, and actually they started telling stories and putting brands in stories. I talk about some of these, like even some of the old ones, like Damn Daniel or the Ocean Spray guy, where all of a sudden the brand is a character in a person's story. And that story and that reach is so much bigger than the brand. And brands are not used to that. They want to control this. So we saw it with Cam with the Dr. Pepper, which was actually a meme, which then ended up in an ad. So we've been in this space where it's kind of swirling for some time, and it will continue to accelerate based on the tools that we have and that people want to create and people can create. And the way that we talk about AI in our company, because we've all gone through, what's this mean? We've just ended up in a very simple place. Yes, you can automate your business, and there are ways that we can match the tech tempo that all companies have been trying to catch up with for a long time. Because once social really hit and became a big part of the marketing plan, everything had to change and we all accelerated. It will continue to accelerate. But what the AI and the new tools will also do is help people get closer to their ideas. And then maybe even have other people create ideas. I was just reading this morning that Gap, and this is something I've been talking to our clients about, and some of my friends that I consult with, which is, hey, think about your own world. Like, yes, there are paid creators out there, but what do you have? And so Gap, the story that I read this morning was the fact that they've had an incredible creator platform that's really worked for them, but they are now reversing that. And they're opening up an opportunity for internal people to become creators and to actually even monetize the brand, because they're really switched on. And they understand all young people consider themselves creators. They all have the tools. And if they actually care about the brand, people are looking to create. They're looking to tell stories. They're looking to be the first. If the brand opens that up to them, they amplify this for them. And so, yes, I do believe that these tools might feel really threatening to the old ways that we've done things. And perhaps they are. And I think the jury is still out. Everybody's fighting over this like they fought over, are we remote or in our office? Now, is it AI stamping this or that? It's going to take some time for this to settle. But at the same time, we're seeing that there are generations of people that are willing and capable to help. And we also see the consumers or humans, we respond to these things that feel really authentic. We trust this. It doesn't have to be the perfectly crafted ad. And I spend a lot of time, as you do, in new media. I've got a show called The Spreadsheet that I've been doing where we're just experimenting about being the first, kind of social oriented show around the prediction markets. So we're on all the time, and I know what performs better and what doesn't perform better and such. And it's like things that feel less produced actually perform really well. The algorithm controls this for us. That live algorithm. And I look at this and actually say, because it's pushing into a space where it feels much more human. Like a live conversation is very, very human. It's very participatory in many ways. So that's just why I'm an evangelist of this space. And I'm excited by what it could be.
I wanted to tap into that conversation that you're having around, the ubiquitousness of creators. I think at some point I had read 97% of Gen Z would be a professional creator of some sort if they could choose a career. I don't disagree with you. I do think the 90%, going from 67 to 90 is probably where we're at now. And then you look at a company like Gap, like you said, who's had this tremendous creator success in reimagining their brand or re-achieving cultural status in kind of the nostalgia era. Mm-hmm. And now saying, hey, let's tap into even more sources of creators, which is our own people and our own fans and our own consumers. As we move to this world where creators are ubiquitous and, I wonder if that also depresses the idea of like being a professional creator as something you can monetize. And I was listening to a podcaster last night who I watch most nights for news, and he said that ad revenue for him is down to about 7% of what it was at the peak of being a professional podcaster in the news space. And he blames like these AI clip farms in India where they basically take his clips, reclip it, put it up there. It's great for him getting his brand everywhere, but it doesn't matter if he can't monetize it. Right. So, at the high end and the low end, I see kind of the idea that maybe the idea of being a creator as a job is maybe going away in some degree. Or at least the aspirational, achievement of that. But does that mean that creator culture becomes, again, a more authentic thing that isn't based on, paying people for, their audience and their, it does become more authentic for brands to be able to tap into this creators as ubiquitous as they are now?
I think it's a fascinating question. The jury will be out on, but all trends run out as we see now. Yeah. And the next, it's all S-words and the next. So what I was just mentioning around Gap, and you're responding to as well, is perhaps that's the next era because it's way more authentic. Instead of paying people to kind of shill for you. And we've seen a number of creators get alienated because it's just been too blatant. They've been all over the shop. It's not why people want to follow them. It becomes another version of interruption, which we just don't want, right? And we have so many controls. We'll have to get back to like why I see those that run their course. We just have more controls right now. And we want that sense of agency. We don't want to be interrupted anymore. And content is not made for ad pods like it was, like Seinfeld was written around ad breaks. You don't write content this way anymore due to streaming. So this is making less and less sense. I agree with you that when everybody becomes a creator, because everything is related to scarcity, and then what's the value of that? Perhaps what we were just discussing is people that are truly engaged as a participant with the brand doing this is way more authentic, which one of the things that we argue when we discuss participation internally is that we see a future where the most valuable brands are the ones that have the largest numbers of active participants. That there's actually there's an intrinsic value of how many humans we can quantify are actually engaged in our brand and helping us. And that creates scale. It's like, it's a variable cost, not a fixed cost. I think that, when everybody becomes a creator, it will lose its value. Right now, we are in an epoch where I think it's still very important, and those clips are very important. I look at the trends of the business, and this is why so many people have probably jumped onto this and why it might jump the shark. But advertising was about pushing products, and then that started to, and we learned all the techniques of persuasion, how we can present this product in a way you really want it. Then we went more upstream when things became way more competitive, and we started doing brand campaigns for a long time. And then our brand campaigns could be much more provocative, and they were upstream to kind of implant, or imprint in your brain what that brand meant before you made a purchase decision or saw the product work. Brand campaigns actually cost a lot of money. We moved out of that. And then we were at an epic maybe of earned media, where it was like, that was what Mistress was born out of, earned media and social, where there were just different ways to do things. So you saw like Crispin and brands, we were doing it where you were actually creating marketing that tried to be amplified through the press, so that you got those extra results. The reality is right now, news is so fractured. So you can't rely on that. So what I discuss internally is it's very difficult to like do the old Colin Kaepernick work where you have really provocative, amazing brand campaign and you get the whole country talking about it because you put some big TV spots out there, because we're not all watching the same thing. We're in our little echo chambers and we might not see that. Then there was the era of doing the really cool stunty advertising that you heard about on CNN. And so everybody's talking about it. The news cycles are way too short right now. And with all the chaos in the world, your news cycle is going to last a minute. I think, maybe thing one this past year was Columbia with the flat earthers. Right now, if you want to be a cultural brand, you have to be in the clip world. Culture is living in clips. So how do brands actually lean into this? So it's creating their own content. It's maybe through these influencers. It's maybe through their own people. I think we're and in between maybe this earned media and this more clip or cultural participatory space, we've been in what I'm saying is like the safety epic, where we've been really focused on performance, really making sure all the media works, because we've gone through a macro situation over the past 5 years where there's so much uncertainty. And so, we have to make sure everything is truly working. We've seen a dip in creativity, I would say. But the automation and the machines are going to help us get that security and safety. And so then to be a cultural brand and to be an authentic brand, it's how do you become a part of this new thing? Now, if the new thing transcends clips and social and all that, we'll all have to move on to whatever the next thing might be. But that's likely why people want to be creators right now. If I take this all the way back to full circle, the idea of just leaning into what you like to do, build your own personal brand and get paid on the side, pretty attractive, especially if it's a side hustle. And I think it's 50% of millennials down all have side hustles in this way. So yeah, listen, if you're in the agency business, you just have to be prepared to keep pivoting, because the next thing's going to come and the next thing's going to come. And that's why I also argue our job as agencies are to kind of challenge our clients and push our clients, because we have to be leaning into the new thing and experimenting with them to see if it works for them or not. So sorry, very, very long answer.
I love it. So I'm fascinated. So you have your own show about the prediction markets.
Yeah.
Okay, that's really cool. So can you talk about, as a strategist, how has the prediction markets changed the way that you think about, this new world of kind of research availability, of kind of how people are betting on every possible thing under the sun? Does that create that? I imagine that creates a different level of engagement when you have when you're not just like taking a survey, you're like you're making a vote with money attached to it to say, like, at the end of the day, I believe in this outcome so much that I'm willing to put my dollars on it. Tell me a little bit about this prediction market show. How did it come to be? How did you become fascinated with this world? And what do prediction markets do for us as strategists now?
Those are great questions. So let's first caveat this whole thing. I don't bet on anything.
Oh, interesting. That's great.
Which is fascinating, but that's actually really true to me as a human. I didn't have a TV my entire. I got one in the pandemic, and I have kids. I didn't have a TV. Not on social. I do LinkedIn, even though I have a social media agency. I'm always a little bit more contrarian, but I deeply study all these things.
Sure.
I'm endlessly curious, which is what all strategist people are. And I would say anybody in advertising, if you're not endlessly curious about all the new things, you probably should go into another industry right now. If you just need, defined guardrails. The prediction markets to me are wild. And at first, I think just like everybody else, I said, what the fuck? And, and some of these things can be kind of horrible. But when you look at it as an industry, the growth is outrageous. The valuations of these companies are outrageous. And so it's something to truly pay attention to. When it really started dawning on me that this is something more powerful than I originally anticipated, I was watching the news. They were talking about some sort of political thing. This was maybe a year ago. And instead of saying, let's look at the polling, they said, let's go to Polymarket. And I went, oh, wow. So now we have broadcasters talking about what the world thinks due to what they're seeing on the Polymarket. And it's because, as you just noted, people put money behind it. And if people put money behind it, it means that they put a little bit more potentially thought or interest, or maybe they're just riding the coattails of others. But that was fascinating to me because we live in, like, if you think about back in the days of strategists getting research or having to conduct research or paying for these tools, like there are live tools that you can go into almost any day about whatever. And so it is absolutely fascinating culturally. I'm not a participant in it, but I'm a viewer of it. But we thought, what an amazing space to actually just explore some content, because I live on the edges. I'm always trying to imagine innovation. I'm saying, why can't an agency create its own media? My agency has done over 20 branded content series for our clients. Why can't we do something on our own? Everything is kind of changing. We should be experimenting about building our own audience. If we're talking to our clients about building an audience, we should be an expert about building our own audience and managing that and monetizing that audience so we can help our clients as we move forward. So I took this on. We've experimented with a number of things. This felt like a really interesting and fun space. And because they were so crazy, we said, well, let's make it a comedy. So we have Noah Garden Schwartz, who's a comedian and so we have all these comedians talking about it, but it's actually evolving, and it's very difficult. Probably similar to your show, because it's the news is constant. So it ends up we're producing it weekly, but the content is out daily and you have to kind of do recaps. So I built a whole world and universe from Substack to every major channel, but just a tiny little team right now. And it does show us people do. And I think once we got this phone and everybody wants to debate and the world is so divisive and everybody wants to have a say, people do want to actually start putting money on things and betting against other people. And we're just so competitive as a society. And so I think it's a fascinating experiment. I don't know where it will net out. There's a lot to learn from it. And some areas are people to best because of the sense of purpose and that we get from sports, and we really engage in them. But I mean, people are betting on the weather. So I think it's a strategy. So to go back to your question, what do I think about it? I think it's absolutely fascinating. I don't know where I stand on what it says for humanity, other than the fact that I argue they are participation markets, because people are participating now in what they believe is going to happen in almost any way to make one of these markets. And the valuations are going through the roof because it just shows that people are engaging and putting real money behind these things. And I think as a strategist, we have endless supply now of research, and it's a really fascinating, I think, view of humanity and where we're all headed. So people want to bet on everything. It's pretty wild. Yeah. And it's having fun doing the show because who knows what the topic might be, whether it's GTA or Jesus coming back, or I mean, they're the craziest things you can imagine that are markets out there. And that's what's kind of fun.
It is fun. I think, obviously sports led the way with kind of the taking the friction out of betting, creating these opportunities for people to bet on micro moments, these really obscure kind of long shot bets that were kind of like your trifecta at the horse races, but just creating these micro moments. And, I wonder if that has led to, how dominant live sports has become like the only thing that can drive live viewership now outside of the occasional award show. But I think it's, the engagement level of watching something as a spectator and then taking that next step of putting money in it. Like anytime I've ever put money on something, I'm not a gambler either generally, but if I go to the Kentucky Derby or something with a client, I'm going to bet I'm going to bet just to be part of the experience because I want that elevated level of engagement. And I think, like you said, that participation, that connection to the brand or the moment increases, whether it's betting on politics, betting on the weather, betting on your favorite sports team, or betting on a moment like World Cup. So I think that's really interesting. I'm fascinated by this idea of you guys launching your own show as an agency. I didn't know if this was kind of officially attached to the agency or more something that you were doing, with your own personal brand. But we've gone through this new era that I think was led by venture capital and big tech, where VCs have invested tremendous amounts of dollars into having an audience, right? So probably the most famous would be the All In podcast guys, the guys at Andreessen Horowitz and the partners there. But every venture capitalist wants a podcast, a Substack. Every bringing capital to a deal doesn't get you the best deals anymore. It's not just the money and the expertise and the portfolio company. It's like, do I have an audience that I can then, plug you into and help accelerate the pipeline of your company and your growth trajectory? Do you think that might happen in the agency world? Do you think being able to bring an audience to the table, Gary Vee's pretty famous for that, right?
Yeah.
Tell me about your thoughts around that idea of like agencies needing to be able to prove that they can build an audience and bring that audience to the table, maybe as like a future maybe component of the currency of why business gets awarded.
Yeah, man, I could speak to our side. I don't know if I'm recommending this for all agencies. So we like to try to walk the walk and talk, and we're entrepreneurs as founders. We've got the agency. So I know you talked to Jens, who has Ceremony. So we have Botanical Brews. We created Mixwell, which is we're going to relaunch it this year with a really large distributor. So we've created products before just because we want to understand how it works. We've always been in the beverage industry. I just am a student of content, saying content is changing. Audiences have value. Brands might have this opportunity. Let's go try this. Will an agency brand have an audience? Maybe Mistress does for a moment, but like you've got to, what it's like to actually have an audience, that commitment to the content and what you're going to do, and it's audience first. So we've done it as an adjacency and said, let's build a show brand, and let's experiment and learn how this works to the side. And I think this will give us insight and understanding and knowledge that will translate back to our clients, that perhaps will lead to more business. I think that brands have 100% the opportunity to go into the space. How it looks, it would be unique to each one. I think they're not thinking this way. They're still stuck in the traditional paradigm. But look at the world, like most people are just sitting there watching YouTube. It's eating content. Most people are looking at clips. They're not even watching full content. We go back to sports and engagement. People are watching clips. And then to go back to even prediction markets, they want to do something so they feel that attachment and engagement. This is all the participatory space that I'm talking about. I think that the audience is really valuable. And I'll give you my perspective on this. It's not the exact answer I think that you were looking for, but it's why I'm also fascinated by it. Let's take some of the products that we built, or, as an agency, how many entrepreneurs I've met who they followed the traditional process. I have an idea. I develop a product. I create a business plan. I go try to raise some money. I get a distributor or whatever it might be. And then I'm going to market that product to the world and hope it works, and 90% of those are going to fail. Let's think about the creator opportunity. You see Mr. Beast or others have done this, where they actually create content, they build an audience, they understand that audience, and then they actually understand what that audience might really want, and then they deliver something, and you have initial traction. In my experience, the hardest, slog of any new business is that initial traction. And sometimes you have, like, if you're removing a friction, you have like a small group, but then how do you scale this thing? And you're thinking about marketing, and usually marketing is a tiny part of your business plan. And it's really, really hard. You got to get lucky. Maybe somebody talks about you on a podcast. There's a reverse paradigm right now, which is build up an audience and then develop something for that audience, and you have it, right? You have that traction, and then can you have that audience actually expand that and be the reach, be the media for you? I think that world is really, really interesting. The VCs probably like this too, because if they're getting pitched 2 products, hey, I've got a really cool product, and I see this vision, and then another one's like, well, I've got this product and I also have like 1 million subscribers, and and I've been able to drive this much merchandise. Who are you going to invest into, right? So this is where the whole world is blending to me, and where I'm arguing active participants, an audience or people is really, really valuable. And we have been renting people since the dawn of advertising, where we buy media, we have a funnel, we put them in the top, we maybe get some people, maybe there's a little bit of advocacy at bottom, but we keep putting money into the funnel, and it keeps going around and round and round and round and round. If we build up social platforms and profiles, we're just renting that audience. Meta owns that audience. TikTok owns that audience. YouTube owns that audience. That's why people are all moving to Substack, because Substack, you own your own audience. You get your CSV file. So I think the world is switching on to the fact that a human audience, especially because the internet's full of so many bots and things look great, but a human audience is way more valuable than we've originally anticipated. And driving transactions is going to be a little bit easier. So there's going to be a lot of value here. That's the way I'm looking at it, and why I've been experimenting with the shows, why I'm experimenting with content, because I think there's something incredibly valuable that will come back into the traditional paradigm.
Yeah, I love it. It goes back to that Red Bull ethos of, the Red Bull was the first brand that thought of itself as a publisher, right? Again, another first. Investing in things that people wanted to watch, and then at some point actually monetizing that marketing and creating their own media engine that not only provided massive brand awareness for their brand, but it became a monetizable asset. So every year, theoretically, you could spend less on renting that audience and more on building that audience that you own. Every personality, every brand, I think you're right, has an opportunity to do that in some way. Just find the channel that you want and like to communicate, and where you feel your customers are, and add value to them, and figure out ways to inform, educate, or inspire them, right?
Yeah.
Love it. All right, let's talk about a little about stunts, because I feel like we couldn't, have a conversation about your guys' agency without thinking about some of the massive things that you guys have done. And again, coming out of like the Red Bull world of, sending people up to space and jumping out of capsules, like back in my day. We always remembered the Red Bull, moments that would dominate attention span because they would do something that no one had ever done before. Yeah. Talk about stunts. What is the calculus for thinking about whether a stunt will work for your brand? What should brands be thinking about? And like you said, in a fragmented world, how do you do a stunt that can potentially break through?
Well, it's a great question, and I haven't even thought about this or stunts in a really long time. So we're just going to free flow here.
Let's go.
I'll give you my perspective on it, though. I think, stunts can be done in 2 ways. The majority of the large ones that we've done have had an audience there, right? Whether it's an activation or a stunt, like often a stunt could be an activation or experience. That's the best way to do it. That's more of the Red Bull way. Like I'll give you an example. They just did something in LA a bunch of months ago, soapbox race. It's not really a stunt, but it kind of is. And they're there for free. and they're all shooting it and creating content and pushing this out. And then the local media is covering it. And think about that experience versus what a family of 4 might have to pay to go see a soccer game or see a football game or something like that. So there's real value in this for both sides. When we did some of the larger stunts that we had done, if they were just mass stunts, like what we had done at Indy or for Hot Wheels, or even like for the Sea Beast when we did something on Santa Monica, these were very much tuned to get some earned media. That was really part of the plan, which is to put some kind of narrative into the local community so it gets some coverage, as well as creating a vehicle for people to kind of share, so that you have that amplification or that tail. And just people are going to have a really, if they experience it, it also tells them, wow, this brand went and did something extra. It invited me in, it gave me something versus interrupting my night on the couch with my significant other. So it's just a different means of entry into their world. And the results have always been there for us when we've done these. Now, sometimes we might do something really big like a Comic-Con. That's for a very specific audience. So I'm blending stunts and engagement. But where I'd come back to stunts right now, I would say is my current perspective is we live in a clippable world. And from my perspective, that's what's been driving so much of culture. As I mentioned before, the news cycle is not what it was. Even if you spend $1 gazillion and do a massive stunt, I don't know how long that's going to last. So you better have a good earned media machine. But we live in a clippable world. So one way that you could look at stunts right now, which is my view for everything, is brand, what are you doing that's actually clippable? What are you putting in there? So for me, every brand needs to be a publisher, or you need to do some kind of partnership, or you need to create some kind of product, or you need to do something that actually gets out there into culture. If you're just doing your marketing campaign with the machine just keeps going, but you're missing the opportunity. Like, people are not clipping your ad campaign, maybe they're remixing, but that's what amplifies and actually spreads and takes a regional brand nationally. It takes a small brand and makes it feel like a much larger brand. People create stories around this. So when you think about these non-traditional participatory things, it's enabling the brand to harness all these people and to actually get that exponential impact that people are willing to do right now. And we have all these platforms. So that's how I would look at stunts right now from an ROI perspective, which is, hey, this is the marketing that gets beyond the bot marketing, which is becoming more and more challenging, or just the basic social, because something that's really interesting or spectacular, because everybody is looking for the thing to put out there these days, and they all have the tools in their hands. That's the role that these can play in the mix.
Yeah. Okay.
In our history, some of these became the anchor, and that's what was different potentially about Mistress and how we think than a lot of other agencies. In the past, I've said we follow the same paradigm where you're going in presenting a manifesto, and here's my idea, and then here are all these little extensions. And most CMOs are just focused on, let's make some TV spots, and they forget about the stuff back here. Most of our most interesting and famous work is when we reversed the paradigm and said, no, the more important thing is the stuff that typically everybody just throws as the throwaway ideas. This is the stuff that's actually going to touch culture, that people are going to want to be a part of, that they could be present at. And it's a memory. It's part of their personal history. If they've attended something or they experienced something, that is the opportunity that you have to actually create a sense of identity or belonging, or whatever that connection might be.
Yeah, I feel like the word stunt almost does it a disservice. It's almost like this invitation to co-create, right? It's like you're creating an environment, you're adding value, you're inviting people in to have a participatory experience. You're inviting them to co-create with you by giving them a backdrop of something that's interesting enough to capture and share with their community, because it feels like a little bit of FOMO, right? Like you got some street cred, be it because you're able to attend this thing in culture and that looks cool to the people who you want to influence and engage with. And then talking about the earned opportunity. Yes, the world is completely fragmented and fractured, but if you're launching, a new, REI cup, if you're inviting, bloggers and creators who cover the outdoor industry, to co-create. Maybe the numbers aren't as impressive, but for the core audience that cares about spending time outside, that might be extremely meaningful to reach all those people through those creators.
Yeah. You hit on a word that's always important in our lexicon, invitation. And there are a couple of things that we would frame up, around work. Like there's campaigns, but we would rather have a conversation. Even if you think about it, I used Kaepernick and Nike back in the day. That wasn't just a campaign. That was a conversation. Now they were able to get that conversation going through a large scale ad campaign because of where media was, but these are more potent in today's world. And so what we argue with participation is, how do you invite people in? And if you're inviting them into a stunt, if you're inviting them into a show, what can you invite them in to? And then what is that potential conversation that could spin beyond this? It's just actually leveraging how we interact as humans. And so, yeah, the other thing I would say too about stunts is if you're just thinking about the stunt or like the stunt as the film, it's the missed opportunity. You have to think about the world build around it. What's leading into the stunt? How does the stunt work? What is the tail of the stunt? How is it all connected? When we had done things like, I'm going way, way back, but something that I always thought was so fun. When we did our Indy stunt, which was for Hot Wheels, and this is 15 years old. But when we went to the 100-year anniversary of the Indy 500 and we set the world record jump, we actually had pre-produced a whole television show of the mythology that we had written around Team Hot Wheels. And that show ran right after Indy. And we actually shot that stunt and then dropped it into that show. So it ran like half an hour after we did the stunt. The show, we had bought the ad block, the 30-minute ad block, and we had a pre-produced show, but it was a donut. We had a hole, and we had produced this, and so we had guys in trailers, and my creative partners figured out how to digitally transmit all this. But then the fascinating thing about that show, if you watch the show gets to it was Tanner Faust. He does the jump, takes off the helmet, it actually stops. The show ends right there, and then pushed you at the time to Facebook, where you'd actually figure out who the person was. So we used this invitation into event because we had 300,000 people, and then we promoted the show and we connected everything together when we built a world around it. We had tremendous success and plenty of metrics around this because we were so thoughtful about it. So if you're just looking at a stunt for a stunt, that's fine. But there are so many ways to be thinking about how to extend it, how to connect people who could be involved these days that you could really amplify something. A stunt could be your whole year if you do it right.
I love it. Well, CJ, fascinating conversation. I made it through 3 of my questions. So many cool things came up naturally in the show. You're very compelling and very knowledgeable about the industry, and I'm super grateful that you spent some time with the audience today to share some of your thinking. If folks want to continue to follow along, connect with you or the agency, where do you want to send people to stay in touch?
Oh, man. Well, you can check out the Many, themany.com. And for me, the easiest way to hunt me down is LinkedIn. Christian Jacobsen at the Many. I will, because I have a book coming out. I have a personal site and all that will launch sometime this year, but I haven't even built it yet. So I'm not going to just hunt me down on LinkedIn. And,
when the book comes out, we'll have to have you back on to walk through some of the specifics. So
absolutely. I appreciate it. I had a really fun time. I'm sorry I talked so much that we couldn't get through the rest of it.
You were great. You were great. I would rather that be the case. Awesome, man. Well, hey, if you are watching the show for the first time, don't forget to give us a follow or a subscribe if you want to see great thought leadership from other creative leaders in the space. If you're listening, give us an honest review. That's how the show finds a wider audience on these podcast platforms. And last but not least, if there's a creative leader out there, maybe somebody in brand land who wants to think about doing something differently or putting some of these lessons into practice, or maybe just someone who you think would enjoy the conversation that I had with CJ today, don't forget to share the show. And with that, I will thank you again for coming on, and we'll see you again soon. All right.
Thank you.
Cheers.